If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets, unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.
And we are back. Welcome to Survival Dispatch News, where we cut through the noise and deliver truth for the patriots who still believe in family, faith, and freedom. We stand for God, country, and the right to defend both. You're not alone out there. We are the voice for those who still believe in truth over tyranny. I'm Chris Heaven, the CEO and owner of Survival Dispatch, and your host this evening. I'm joined by my good friends and returning panelists, Jeff MD, our in-house CIA operative, affectionately known as 007, and author extraordinaire, and my good friend Randy Nance, former Green Beret, combat injured vet from back home in Texas. So glad to see you guys. Randy, I'm really, really glad that your schedule is such that you can join us back on Survival Dispatch News. We missed you a lot. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that, Chris. Missed you guys too.
Yeah, it's so good to have you back. So tonight we're diving deep into white genocide, especially the farmers in South Africa, with no BS, just what you need to know essentially. And if you're with us this evening to talk uneducated smack, you're going to get banned. There's always one in every crowd. But I want to share an email that I got earlier today. Actually, that's not the email, but I will since it's up. I want to say thank you to Richard. Richard signed up as a founder for Survival Dispatch on Substack, and it's appreciated very, very much. Thank you, Richard. So this is actually the email I'm mentioning here. So Carlton Moore responds back to the SITREP for today that this is a bullshit conspiracy. And I hope that Carlton is with us tonight and is willing to listen to the actual facts. The fact that he wrote this email and said what he said, who knows? Maybe he's being facetious. Maybe it's sarcasm. I don't know. Maybe he legitimately feels that it's a conspiracy theory. And if he is, I hope he joined us tonight so he can hear the facts, see the facts, and understand that the legacy media is flat out lying to him and the rest of the country. And I have friends who emigrated from South Africa to America in the range of 20 years ago or so. And it's a husband and wife, and neither one of them have been able to get their parents into America because they're older. They would be a burden. They hadn't paid into Social Security, those sort of things. So those individuals are getting texts from back home on a regular basis. And this has been going on for many years. And then they'll show them to me. And these are videos I can't share in Survival Dispatch News. They're so horrendous that we would get smoked instantly for glorifying violence. But I do have a couple things that I'll share with y'all. But before we jump into that, we've got a handful, I think maybe 3 headline news articles that we're going to quickly discuss. And then we're going to dive deep into the white genocide against farmers in South Africa topic. So here's the first one up, and this is somewhat encouraging. So House Oversight Chair James Comer just announced subpoenas in the autopen scandal. He thinks we may be able to go to court and get Biden's executive orders thrown out because of the autopen. 1 minute, 36 seconds. I'm going to play the whole thing. I think Trump is right that this autopen debacle is going to turn into a really, really big deal. Let's listen to what they have to say, and then we'll get Jeff and Randy's input on it.
Say that no, they just talked to Joe Biden and he was tip top. He was in great physical condition. He was at the top of his game. Now they're coming back covering the track saying, yeah, it looks like he was in mental decline. Well, we all know he's in mental decline. What we need to know is who was calling the shots at the White House. And one thing that was also mentioned on your show thus far is that when you sign a document that has legal implications, it has to be signed personally. It can't be signed by an autopen. You use autopen for proclamations and mass letters and things like that. So I think that if we can understand more about the autopen and whether or not Joe Biden authorized it, I think this could lead to a lot of those executive orders being kicked out in court.
All right. And when do you expect these subpoenas to go out?
Well, the letters have already gone out to the staffers as well as Dr. O'Connor. So if we don't hear anything from them in a week, then I would expect to start seeing subpoenas.
And if they fight the subpoena, what do you do?
We'll go to court, Jesse. They're going to try to plead executive privilege, and they're lawyering up, and we're ready. That's why we're making sure every I's dotted and every T's crossed. The best thing that's happened in the last week with respect to this is all the new books that are coming out and all the former Biden staffers who are trying to cover their tracks. You're going to see people like Pete Buttigieg who think they have political futures come forward and say, you know, we didn't know anything. There were gatekeepers. They wouldn't let us speak with Joe Biden. And the more that comes out, the easier it's going to be to get to the truth.
So just my personal opinion, I'll go to you first, Randy, is I think that the most important thing that he said is if we lose confidence in our signatures, in our checks and balances, we lose the country. And it wasn't in that snippet. It was an accompanying article that I wrote, but I think that's pretty powerful. If we lose confidence in our signatures, in our checks and balances, we lose the country. Curious to hear what you've got to say on the autopen scandal, Randy.
Well, you know, when it comes to Biden, I mean, everybody knows, heck, even before the guy was elected this last time, that he really wasn't all there. So now that, just like everybody's talking about now, they're pretending, oh gosh, what a surprise. He's like this and now he has cancer. We knew this. If it wasn't the FBI that, you know, basically brushed his top secret documents case underneath the rug, and he was vice president when he retained those documents, which is illegal. The president can do it when he leaves office, but the vice president doesn't have that, correct? I think that's correct. He doesn't have those documents. So those were actually illegal documents. It's funny, they tried to get the other side with that charge, which he was in his perfect right to do so. And it falls back that, you know, hey, Biden did this when he was vice president. And now they're all over the place. They're not even secured. But they found him not fit to be able to be tried or questioned. Mm-hmm. How's he signing anything, any executive order or a pardon or anything else? That basically tells us from that point, we know. Now, we already knew, but that was confirmation that this guy wasn't all there. How's he signed executive orders and pardons and everything else he was doing? How was he?
It's a great question. And I can't speak to the veracity of this, Randy, but not too long ago, I read an article that said the only document that could be found with Joe Biden's actual signature on it was the letter he wrote when he withdrew from the Democratic nomination process. But everything else was done by the autopen. Jeff.
Hey, sorry. Makes you wonder where they got that one signature.
Right. Jeff, I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on the chances that we will see any of the Biden proclamations and executive orders overturned based on the autopen scandal? And you're on mute, by the way.
I think what's going to boil down to is Biden's competency and not the fact that someone else was running the machine. Let's put it this way. Okay, I used to run a bar and we had to write checks for our liquor, and my boss would pre-sign all the checks because he was a signatory on the account. But if liquor came in, beer and liquor came in, and he was out of town, you know, we would fill out those checks. He'd already signed them, and then we'd give them to the distributor. Well, a couple times we ran out of checks. He didn't come back, and so we would forge his name on the checks because we had to have beer to keep the bar open. Now, right. You're only going to get in trouble if he files a complaint. And then sometimes I would just sign my own name to him, and the company would say, well, you're technically allowed, but we're not going to press it. You know, they don't care. They want their bar staying open. So it's intent, and does the person whose name you're forging care? Now, if Biden said, okay, I would have signed those things had I been there. Yeah, they did it. I don't care. I'm not going to complain. Then you're not going to be able to really do anything about it. But if he is mentally incompetent, now it is like you're writing checks on your dementia-addled grandmother's account and taking the money and put it in your own pocket. She cannot approve of that after the fact. And so you're now guilty of a fraud. So whoever signed that stuff, if they could, if you can show that Biden was either unaware of it or unable to agree to it, then they're perpetrating fraud.
Well, Travis's comment is valid as well. There's a number of things that people, ask President Biden, well, fake President Biden, why he signed one thing or another. And his response was, what do you mean? I didn't sign anything like that. But again, he's not playing with a full deck. So
true, but that doesn't bother me as much because, hey, thank you for that letter you sent me. What letter? Well, it's because someone else sent the letter and he signed it. You're responding. As a high school kid, I would send a letter. I sent a letter to Richard Nixon, and he actually wrote me back. But I also sent them to like Gerald Ford. It came back with an autopen. Okay, but Nixon's was actually signed. You could look and tell that it was signed by a real person.
right. Well,
but yeah, there's probably hundreds of autopen letters and photos that are signed every day. In the White House, especially when you have a president who's mentally compromised to begin with. So you're really going to have to prove that it was signed by an autopen, and that either he didn't know it, or was unable to comprehend what it was. That's going to be the key issue, I think.
can't speak to the legalities here, but I did read an article that said that the autopen is only for essentially ceremonial things like you just described, and it is not for actual executive orders and proclamations. But
well, the precedents got set under Obama.
Correct.
They passed a law. It needed to be signed. He was in Europe on an official trip, and he said, sign it with an autopen.
Correct.
And he gave them verbal, and no one challenged it. And that was the problem. Someone should have challenged it and said, no, it has to be signed physically by him. Well, once you do that and it goes on for, 20 years, now all of a sudden it's precedence.
Well, we now know who one of the main players was in the whole autopen scandal, and her name's Anita Dunn. And C3 here says she's a communist lunatic. She worked in Obama and Biden admins. Her husband is Robert Bauer, who is a partner at Perkins Coie and Obama White House counsel. Anita running the autopen would explain why the Biden administration went full commie. The video is 1 minute and 13 seconds long. I'll play most of it. I may play all of it, but she's a big, big fan of Mao, by the way. Wait till you hear what she's got to say.
And then the third lesson and tip actually come from two of my favorite political philosophers, Mao Zedong and Mother Teresa, not often coupled with each other. But the two people that I turn to most to basically deliver a simple point, which is you're going to make choices. You're going to challenge. You're going to say, why not? You're going to figure out how to do things that have never been done before. But here's the deal. These are your choices. They are no one else's. In 1947, when Mao Zedong was being challenged within his own party on his plan to basically take China over, Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalist Chinese held the cities. They had the army, they had the Air Force, they had everything on their side. And people said, how can you win? How can you do this? How can you do this against all of the odds against you? And Mao Zedong said, you fight your war and I'll fight mine.
So, Randy, did you go to war and suffer grievous injuries so that somebody like this could assume the position of signing executive orders and other proclamations into effect?
Well, absolutely not. Certainly somebody that one of their favorite persons is, someone that brought in communism into China. And I mean, she looked very proud there. She was saying all that. She definitely was, and to think, that's why we have elected officials, so that there's accountability. Problem is, and I'm sure she's not the only one, as we all speculate, there's probably a committee of them.
Yeah.
And so, that's the American people's, and certainly what's most dangerous to our republic. It's can't have this kind of thing. That's what we tried to avoid. That's why our system is set up the way that it is.
So, question for you, Jeff. How many tens of millions of people did Mao essentially execute or kill?
Best estimate, well, through the starvation and everything of his failed policies, it's 55 million. He ordered the murders, the executions of 1 million landlords personally, and set quotas for how many people they had to kill.
Yeah, so clearly the post from C3 calling her a communist lunatic is probably a pretty accurate description. So speaking of lunacy, this is the last piece of headline news before we dive into our main story tonight. I'll always love you. Tragic final words of boy 9 to his brother after being brutally stabbed to death by playmate 12. Michael Connor Vakirky was fatally stabbed while playing in a Michigan playground on Monday. He spent his dying breath telling his brother he loved him and reassuring him that the shocking attack wasn't his fault. Connor was playing with two of his brothers when another boy, Jamarion Lawhorn, 12, who pulled out a knife and repeatedly stabbed him. The boy's great uncle, Jim Stern, said the horrific incident had left the family absolutely numb. About 100 people gathered at the scene of the crime on Wednesday night for a candlelight vigil to celebrate Connor's memory. The community has started a GoFundMe site to help pay for Connor's funeral expenses. And here's a picture of the victim. And here's a picture actually beside him. This is the victim on the right, as well as the one above. And this is the kid who stabbed him. And this 12-year-old is going to be charged as an adult. And on top of that, my question to both of you is, since when do we refer to a murderer, which is crazy as it sounds for a 12-year-old, since when do we call somebody like that a playmate? They had never met this kid before. It wasn't a playmate. It wasn't a friend. I personally find that the choice of words on the part of the media offensive. This wasn't a playmate.
It's right up there with Maryland Man.
Yes.
Abrego is a Maryland man. No, he's not. He's now a Salvadoran gang member. They tried to do this to downplay the horror of it.
Right.
They make it sound like two kids playing, one accidentally stabbed the other. No, some stranger came up and murdered this little kid.
He stabbed him repeatedly in the back while he was on the ground.
Yes.
Absolutely horrific. Randy, do you want to take a swing at this before we move into the main story?
Well, just because where did you say, was this Michigan or where did this happen?
Yeah, it was in Michigan.
When we just had an example, in the last couple of months, where a kid's at a track meet or whatever it was, get stabbed to death, and look how the media treated that guy. And then the murderer has, received, $400,000 or $500,000 from a GoFundMe. They rented a, expensive home in a gated community. They bought a $150,000 Cadillac. Basically it tells them, if you go do this, you're going to get paid.
Yeah,
because it's the same. Unfortunately, it's the same, dynamics that case is, and unfortunately, even younger. And now this 12-year-old sees this is a way maybe I can raise my family up. I don't know. It's crazy.
I don't know. It is. It's absolutely crazy times we live in. Besides the cultural stuff, which we can discuss in another episode, what bothers me in each of these cases is the selective language that the legacy media uses, like Jeff and you said, to distort the reality of the situation, which is a great dovetail into the main topic tonight, because this genocide against white farmers and whites in general in South Africa has been going on for decades. This is not something new. There are mountains of evidence out there, and we've got some really good content queued up for tonight. The first one I want to share, and this is from my friend who came here from South Africa about 20 years ago. And, you know, the white genocide story, it's not hyperbole, it's not a conspiracy theory. This is a campaign of targeting white farmers in South Africa. And the mainstream media can dance around the word genocide all they want, but these families are being slaughtered in their homes, and it's in the order of thousands. It's not, you know, one or two or dozens or hundreds. And, you know, this it matters to all of us over here on this side of the world, because if you don't shine a light on this stuff, and we're back to consequences, right? If we don't shine a light on it, there are no consequences. But check this picture out here. This was texted to me, I want to say about 5 years ago, from my buddy who came over here from Africa. And I can't show a lot of stuff like the videos and whatnot, but here's the caption on it. And this came from his father in South Africa. 3 black criminals shot dead after they attacked an elderly farmer, 78, and his wife, 74, on a farm outside Lichtenburg. 1 suspect was wounded and arrested. 1 farm attacker, 1 bullet. So this particular instance, I didn't pick it because of what happened. I picked it because I can't show the other crap. I just can't show it. But here's a picture that he texted me right around the same time. I went through all my iMessages. So this is the news in South Africa. And look at the t-shirt, kill all white people. It's a common theme that is revisited over and over again. So before we get into, you can call it an ambush, whatever you want, that Donald Trump pulled on, you know, the president of Africa, but I personally think it was a great way to bring light to this. I just want to get both of your high level, you know, opinions on this. Jeff, I'll go to you first, and then Randy. High level, in your words, what's been going on in South Africa?
Well, you know, I have friends who were originally came over from Rhodesia in the 70s, and then South Africa in the early 80s. And it has been going on forever. You know, apartheid was bad. No one's saying that apartheid was a good system by any stretch of the imagination. But what's been going on, it happened in Rhodesia, which became Zimbabwe. They basically took all the farmland away from the white farmers, and then kicked them. Most of them left the country, or they were kicked out of the country. And then the country starved because they took productive farms. Zimbabwe used to be one of the largest producers of agricultural products on the continent of Africa. And it went from that to being a food importer because they couldn't feed themselves. Then, and a lot of the Rhodesians fled, and they went to South Africa, and then some came to the United States and went all over the world. But then the same thing happened in South Africa. You know, they got rid of apartheid. ANC came out. You know, you had you know, the main guy, I can't even remember, so I'm blanking on his name now. But you know, he took over, and they had that whole truth and reconciliation thing. We're going to put it behind us. We're going to move forward. But as soon as he died, then the people came in and goes, no, we need to exact a pound of flesh. And and then they've recently passed a law where it says it's legal for them to just go in and take land away from white farmers with no compensation. Mm-hmm. They're trying to say, oh, it's like eminent domain. No, it's not. When you take someone's land in eminent domain, you got to pay them for it. They're just saying, sorry, get off your land. It's ours now. And if you stay behind or fight, you're going to die. And they've been killing white farmers, and white people in general have been huge victims of crime there. Now, there's plenty of crime to go around. There's there's a lot of blacks killing blacks as well, but they have been systematically targeting the white farmers so that they can get their land. Now, are they going to do anything with the land? Probably not. There's not a huge, rich tradition of organized agriculture in that part of the world, before the Boers got there. But they're gonna do to themselves what they did in Rhodesia. And
So let's just make sure everybody understands this. Rhodesia is now known as Zimbabwe. And the government in Zimbabwe, not too many years ago, started begging white farmers to return to the country because there's no food.
Yeah.
And they don't have the skills or the knowledge or whatever it may be to produce food like the whites did. Randy, before you go, I want to mention here. So Travis, super loyal survival dispatch guardian and follower. He's also law enforcement. I've seen pictures and videos of groups assaulting a farm wearing backpacks with military grade signal jammers that cost thousands of dollars. They're clearly being supported by a government. And that's a really good and accurate comment, because I've been told this by my friends as well. They're highly organized and extremely violent. So Randy, I'll get your high level opinion on what's been going on, and then we'll listen to this great video here. You're on mute, Randy.
Huh. All right. Yep. Got it. I don't think I can cover it better than Jeff just did, but it's a fact. I know that you just have to, people have to realize, and probably most people watching this show, except a few, do. When is the mainstream media or the legacy media told the truth in the last 10 years? I mean, we can go over many, many instances where they haven't told the truth, and every time it's been a lie, or like this Biden thing. And when it finally comes out, oh my gosh, it's such a surprise. It's not true. So, the fact is, they are having a rough time over there, and I'll just leave it at that.
Fair enough. So before we play this video, there's a new feature in StreamYard where you can take the comments and you can put them on top, like an overlay on top of the screen. I'm not going to leave it on while the video is playing, but I want to see what it looks like. And okay, so that's interesting. It doesn't automatically come up. It says there's additional things need to be done. So we're going to turn that back off. I wanted to see what it would do. So this is the infamous incident this week in the White House 2 days ago, when President Trump brought up the video of South African people calling to kill the white Afrikaners and made the president of South Africa sit there and watch it. This president, by the way, has a long history of being over the top racist against whites and condoning the murder of white farmers. It's 4 minutes and 28 seconds long. I hate to play a video that long. I might play the whole thing, but if I do, I'll stop it in between so I can get comments from both of you.
Turn the lights down. Turn the lights down, and just put this on. It's right behind you.
Smile on the president's face from Africa.
Without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. South Africa occupied land. That's who we are. Yes, honorable member. Must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act. Shoot, kill,
So kill the Boer, BOER, which are the white Afrikaners. The guy with the mic is the same guy who was speaking in their legislature, debating with the president 30 seconds ago in the video. So there again, I want to make sure that everybody catches it because the volume's a little iffy, and plus he's got an accent. Kill the boar, BOER is what he's saying.
The man of DJPE is a white man. So these people really want to hit them hard. Go after a white man. They think a talent will pay because they attack a white man. Not because myself so they will not be taxed. There will be tax. Come on. But what's happening to this whiteness? What's happening to the growth of whiteness in China? No one stop. Kill the brewer, the papa. Kill the brewer, the papa. Shoot to kill. Come on, sir. Kill the brewer, the papa. Kill the brewer, the papa.
Thank you was of course for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't guarantee the future. Do you understand somebody watching that, especially if it doesn't get shared on Twitter? They freak out. It sounds like a genocide or
So I don't know if you can see the caption here, but we are going to hit them. Just before that, it said we're going to kill the boar. We're going to shoot them with the machine gun. They are going to run. We're going to shoot them. So this is where they get into the topic you brought up, Jeff, as far as them expropriating land. And as we've seen so far in this video, there are quite literally countless recordings of him and his, compatriots routinely calling for the death of white farmers. If you listen closely, some of the stuff in there goes beyond just shooting them, and they're essentially making the argument that you need to torture them before they die, and that's happened. A lot of white families where they've come in, they've tied the husband up, they've raped the wife in front of the husband, murdered her, and then tried to murder him. In a couple cases, they thought the guy was dead, but he wasn't dead, and he lived to tell the tale. I don't know if you guys want to add anything at this point of the video or carry on, but it's your call. Jeff, you have anything to add at this point?
No, I mean, they've been saying they want to kill the whites for decades, and now they're doing it. Well, they've been doing it for decades. It's when people tell you who they are, believe them.
And my point, agreed. My point is this is not a conspiracy theory. There are mountains of evidence that this has been going on for a long time. We've actually spoken to it very briefly a number of times on Survival Dispatch News. Randy, do you have anything you want to say before we carry on?
No.
Okay, fair enough.
If they object, they can seek a refugee in America.
Now this is very bad. These are burial sites right here. Burial sites. Over 1,000 of white farmers, and those cars are lined up to pay love on a Sunday morning. Each one of those white things you see is a cross, and there's approximately 1,000 of them. They're all white farmers, the family of white farmers. And those cars aren't driving, they're stopped there to pay respects to their family member who's killed. And it's a terrible sight. I've never seen anything like it. Both sides of the road, you have crosses.
So that the end of that video actually is a great segue into the next one. And Katie Hopkins published a video 5 years ago, and she put it on YouTube for free. And I'm going to share the link with everybody. It's actually the tab after this one here. And you can read what she says. I spent months living and sleeping on white farms. At night is when the monsters come. Please share full documentary on YouTube. Do you either one of you want to add anything now before we watch this? Because we're going to watch the full minute and 57 seconds because we don't have time to watch a 1 hour plus documentary. Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll watch this. If there's anything that catches your attention, though, during this, feel free to stop me and interject.
If you don't do what we are telling you to do, we're going to rape your wife in front of you and kill her and rape even your children, this small one.
My husband was murdered in what they classify as a farm attack, and they shot him in the head in front of us, and he fell at my feet.
In the last year, there were roughly 84 farm murders.
If you didn't tell us to say, well, where's the money, we're going to shoot yourself. Like when they count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You put an arm like this and they show me the way out.
How long were you raped for?
Police weapons have been used.
I hit the ground, they started hitting me and said, today we're going to kill you, you white bastard.
Shoot to kill, kill him.
It's a racial thing. And the world can say what they want. The black people don't want us here.
We belong to each other and we owe it to each other if we want to keep on farming.
They can come and kill me, but I won't go.
So I just shared the link to the full documentary on YouTube, which is free, and there's more copies than just this one. There's many copies of it, and I want to just add this. She made a comment to the effect that she lived through this stuff, the monsters coming in the night and hearing the horrible screams of people being raped and murdered. And she said, this is not a metaphor. It's not historical fiction. It's happening. And again, this movie, so I think if you look on YouTube here, it says when it was posted 6 years ago, it was posted. So long before this topic came up this week with Donald Trump and the president of Africa. I'll go to you first, Randy. I'm just curious what your level of awareness was as far as this whole thing of killing the white farmers is before this week. Was it something that you'd heard of before, that you'd read about, that you'd watched any videos on?
It definitely wasn't as big as it is now, but yeah, I think over the last several years, there's been rumblings about it throughout the community. I think, are you on mute?
Chris, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Chris.
Dang it. I did it to myself. Jeff, I'm curious what your level of awareness is, because your level of awareness is high on virtually everything. I'm assuming that it was high because you also have a friend from there.
Well, yeah, several friends. I grew up in a mining town, and our mine at one point was purchased by Anglo American, which was a South African company. And so several South African families moved in. The higher upper management were some South Africans, and so I went to high school with them. Some of them went to college with them. And so we had a lot of South Africans and Rhodesians as well. And so we saw it. We knew it was going on, and because of that, I've been kind of paying attention over the last 50 years because these were friends of mine, and it's just brutal what's going on there. And when we lived in Houston, we had a neighbor who was a young couple, and he was South African, and he would talk about how bad things were getting, and he was immigrating to the United States. He married his girlfriend, and she was an American, and he was going to move to the U.S. And they were going back to visit family, and I was like, "Man, are you nuts?" And he says, "Well, they live in a relatively safe area, and it may be the last time I get to see them if they don't leave." So it's pretty grim.
It's incredibly grim, and as grim as it is, the thing that really bothers me the most is that the legacy media, we're back to these, they're not even 80-20 issues. They're like 95-5 issues where the legacy media, the uniparty, rhinos, Democrats, they seem to keep coming on the wrong side of everything. They want to support the wrong side of everything, or they want to cast aspersions on everything. This is not a conspiracy theory. There are mountains of evidence, and this has been going on for years. And for the legacy media to march out their, reporters, so-called reporters, to say that this is all baloney, I find it offensive, but I also find it very disconcerting that here we are, the most sophisticated, largest, most powerful country in the world, richest country in history, and somehow we have no legitimate media outside of private individuals, much like us, and you have a portion of our country who actually believes the propaganda that this is not happening. I mean,
well, the same thing happened in Russia in the 30s. You had Walter Durante, who was the main reporter for the New York Times, covered up the whole Ukrainian famine. And then you had in World War II, leading up to World War II, you had people who covered up everything that the Nazis were doing. You had Americans, you had British, you had French who covered up for the Nazis. And maybe for different reasons, but hiding large-scale wrongs like this is not new. I mean, how many people still praise still praise Mao? We had that one woman on there praising Mao. He's responsible for 55 million people dying. But they still act like he's a hero because the truth is incompatible with their viewpoint and their politics. So you just ignore it.
Yeah, it's crazy. So this next video actually is a great example of what I was speaking to as far as the legacy media trying to push their, outright lies, and propaganda. And I'm not going to read this because she speaks to it well in the video, but the caption on this is 911, there's been a murder. White House press secretary Carolyn Leavitt just went off on a fake news NBC reporter who claimed the videos President Trump shared of white South African burial sites were fake. Absolute bloodbath. It's 1 minute and 44 seconds. I will probably play the whole thing.
The president showed a video that he said showed more than 1,000 burial sites of white South Africans that he said were murdered. We know that that was not true and that the video wasn't showing that. So I wonder, why did the president choose to show that? It's not true that the video was showing a burial site. It is unsubstantiated that that's the case.
No, it is true that that video showed the crosses that represent
what the president claimed.
The video showed images of crosses in South Africa about white farmers who have been killed and politically persecuted because of the color of their skin. And those crosses are representing their lives. Those crosses are representing their lives in the fact that they are now dead and their government did nothing about it. Are you disputing that there's no...
video showed what the president claimed it showed, because it did not show that. But even more, what I'm asking you is who at the
No,
White
it did
House
show that. It
who at
showed
the
white crosses representing people who have perished because of racial persecution.
verifies the videos that the president shows, and what protocols are in place when there's unsubstantiated information being put out for the world and world leaders to
Yamiche,
show?
what's unsubstantiated about the video? The video shows crosses that represent the dead bodies of people who were racially persecuted by their government. In fact, the Associated Press, of all places, has a picture of that very monument. And the caption from the Associated Press is, "Each cross marks a white farmer who has been killed in a farm murder." So it is substantiated, not just by that video and the physical evidence that everybody saw on display in the Oval Office, but also by another outlet in this room, the Associated Press. So you should take it up with them if you believe the claim is unsubstantiated. And that's a ridiculous line of questioning.
So before you all comment on this, I'm going to bring the next one up right here. Associated Press. A view of crosses planted at the White Cross Monument, each one marking a white farmer who has been killed in a farm murder, is seen on a hillside in Yesterberg near Polokwane, South Africa, May 15th, 2025. Associated Press photo, Themba Hadebi. I mean, even the legacy crooked media, in this case, the Associated Press, has copped to this. Do either one of you want to comment on anything further on the legacy press before we move on?
I think what the woman was getting at, and she was trying to make a mountain out of a molehill, is I think Trump had said grave. Well, they weren't graves. It was more a memorial. It'd be like saying when you put out 2,973 American flags on the lawn to represent each American who died on 9/11. You're not saying they're buried there. It's right. And they're not buried there either. He kind of misspoke a little bit, but I think everybody knew it. They're just representative of those people. It's a memorial. And she made it sound like, well, yeah, he said they're buried there. They're not buried there. No, he didn't really say that. He said it represents the grave of every one of those represents the grave of a white farmer, which is true. They're trying to twist his words, take it out of context to make it sound like he's making the whole thing up. No, he's not. Could he have clarified it to say they represent a dead South African? Yeah, but he said represent the grave of a South African. Okay, potato. Doesn't alter the fact thousands of white farmers in South Africa are being slaughtered by militant blacks who want to take their land. And when the main guy, God, I just blanked on his freaking name again, who was the head of South Africa when apartheid fell. He said, we're not going to take
Nelson Mandela.
And Nelson Mandela. He said, we're not going to take their land, because I think he was smart enough to realize, well, we got to feed people. So you don't kill the farmers if you want to eat. Well, when he died, that's when all this, we got to take their land away and redistribute it to the people. Well, they're going to distribute it to people who don't know how to farm. And when the Dutch went there in the 1600s, there was no agriculture there. And actually, they found out by accident that the land was fertile. And then they decided the reason they were growing food initially was to provision ships on their way to East Asia for the spice trade. It wasn't set up to be this big colony to take over the whole thing. They said, well, ships are going to come. They can get water and they can get food. Let's grow the food for them. And, we'll do it that way. But there was no organized agriculture down there at all when they got there.
Right. So I've got a comment up from Rick McNamee. Hey, everyone, just joined the stream. I'm South African living on a small farm. I'm very thankful the problems here are finally getting some attention. Thank you, President Trump. I've got a quick comment on this. The last time that we covered what was going on in South Africa specific to this same topic, it was Mike Sterling and I can't remember what the number was, but we had a huge number of Boer, white South Africans show up and comment on that video. They're clearly paying attention to what's going on out there to find all the live streams and stuff. And we wish you the best of luck, Rick. Randy, do you want to weigh in before we move on to the next video?
Well, I was just going to say, you know, and I've mentioned it on panels before, quite some time back. You know, the reality is, this is probably just a little test pod. You know what I mean? In Africa, because obviously we see things changing here in this country and the way things are being dealt with in the law, including the 2 cases we mentioned before we got onto this. But the reality is, it's because no one cares about Africa. You know, they haven't been. I've said it all along, you know, the Democrats don't really care about all these causes that they say they do, because if they did, look at Africa. They wouldn't be letting what's going on in Africa happen. And that was long before all this stuff hit the news, but no one cares. So you know, whatever happens out there happens. And, you know, so yes, I'm glad that I'm with this guy and the rest of them. I'm glad that it's getting, because I don't like injustice. I don't really care what the reason is. You know what I mean? I would rather things be right, for sure.
100%. So this next video really strikes at the heart of this. So the president of South Africa brought these 2 white golfers with him, and that was kind of his way to prove there's no systemic persecution of whites in South Africa. But when Donald Trump asked one of the golfers for his input on this stuff, I don't know if it's in this video angle. There's another video that has the same recording that shows the president's face from Africa, and he's literally aghast at what this golfer has to say. 1 minute, 39 seconds. I'm going to play the whole video.
I grew up in an area in South Africa that is a farmland area, Polokwane, and there is some issues up there. Obviously, my dad was a property developer as well as a part-time farmer. And yeah, some of these buddy farmers got killed. The farm is still going. My brothers run it, but it's a constant battle with farms they're trying to burn the farms down to chase you away. So it is a concern to try and make a living as a farmer. And at the end, you know, without farmers, there's no food on the plate. So we need the farmers to produce the food.
Farming, right? He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't even want to do what you're doing. Right? They love farming. They don't want to leave. But it's a struggle.
Yeah, and you know, food and fresh water is the most important thing in life. You know, without those 2 things, you can't survive.
How is the water there?
The water is great. Obviously, all the water comes out of the borehole, out of ground for us down there. But yeah, it is a battle to get the water out sometimes when all the equipment gets stolen all the time that you're trying to get the
So
water
does
out.
your family and your brother, do they feel safe on the farm?
They live behind electric fences, you know, try and be at night safe. But it is constant whenever you leave that something could happen. And
there's nowhere to live.
You know, both of them has been attacked in their houses. My mom's been attacked in her house when she was 80. So it is difficult.
Yeah, pretty crazy. I don't know if there's anything else to add at this point in time. The video kind of speaks for itself, but I'll move on to Scott Jennings' take on this. So whether you call it genocide or not, the fact is white farmers in South Africa are being murdered. How many more need to get killed before the left is satisfied with the terminology? It was a total boss move by President Trump to confront the South African president today. 54 seconds. I'll play the whole thing, and then I'll come to you first, Jeff, and then you, Randy.
Whether you call it a genocide or not, the facts are white farmers in South Africa have been murdered. A lot of people have tried to cover this up. A lot of people in, I think, media in the United States have tried to cover it up. Obviously, the South African government doesn't want to talk about it, so it was kind of a boss move for Donald Trump to roll that television in there today. And I think even the agriculture minister in the Oval Office confirmed that these people are, in fact, being murdered. So my question is, if it's not a genocide today, how many do we want to let get murdered so that people around here can be satisfied? Okay, now it's a genocide. Let's let a few more. I don't understand. We're talking about 50-something people they were trying to let in. And everybody's losing their mind after we let in 20 million illegal immigrants over the last several years. The president is trying to prevent genocide from happening any further to these people. They are clearly being discriminated against. Some have been murdered. This was an interesting spectacle in the Oval Office today, but it had to happen because I don't think anybody was telling the truth about it. Whether you call it a genocide or not, the facts are white.
So the gist of this video is that, kind of like you said, Jeff, as far as splitting hairs on what Trump said, they're trying to split hairs on the word genocide. And I guess the question is, how many murders of white people is it going to take before the word genocide is accurate in the legacy media's viewpoint?
Well, and you look at the, a genocide is an effort to destroy a group of people in an area based on, religion or religion or race or whatever. You're trying to eliminate an entire class of people. And that's exactly what's happening. You could call it, oh, it's just racial conflict. Well, except you don't have armed gangs of white people going into black areas and slaughtering entire black families. You don't have that. And it's sad. It shouldn't be this way, but it is. You've got the majority, 99.9% of the perpetrators, sadly, are Black Africans, and 99% of the victims are white Africans. And they've been there for 400 years. At what point do they become Africans? They've been there longer than any white, almost anybody who's been in the United States. So the question is, okay, it isn't their national origin. They've been there for 400 years. Then it's their race. And that's all it is. They didn't take their land. They didn't, they weren't farming there before. They didn't go in and take the black farms and take it over and say, now we're going to do everything. This land was not under cultivation at all. And they came in and they did it to provision ships, and they said, hey, there is great. The soil is fertile. Yeah, let's start a colony here. But it's racial. It's 100% racial.
So I think the biggest thing that you said there that sticks with me is the land wasn't occupied and being used for agricultural purposes or any other purpose. And the Boers are the ones who developed the land and made food bountiful. Here's another thing too. And I'm not a big fan of Vladimir Putin. I think he's about as crooked as a dog's hind leg. But not that many years ago, maybe 5 years ago-ish, he said to the white farmers in South Africa, if you're tired of being slaughtered, come to Russia and come farm in Russia, and we'll be glad to have you. And it's just interesting. Now here we are a few years later, and we're offering, some refugee status, whatever you want to call it, some sanctuary for them. And I see Rick from South Africa has mentioned that their names are in the refugee program of waiting. We wish you the best of luck with that, Rick. Randy, here's a question for you, just because each of these videos kind of touches on many of the same things. My personal opinion is that when we're recruiting people to come to America, we should be recruiting people who bring something to the table, not people who come with their hand open. And so if you think of Ellis Island, you think of post-World War II, the tens of millions of Europeans who came here, they didn't come here because they were getting welfare, because they were getting Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP programs, food stamps, all that sort of stuff. They came here to make a life for themselves, and they worked hard. The invaders that the Biden administration allowed into our country, in addition to many of them being, hardcore criminals, are putting a strain somewhere in the neighborhood of $450 billion a year on our economy. And that's a number from the GAO, by the way. So if the GAO says it's $450 billion, I'm going to bet that it's closer to $1 trillion a year being spent on the tens of millions of illegals who have no right to be here. What are your thoughts, Randy, on, let's say you could wave a magic wand and we could get all these invaders out of the country? Who would you be looking to bring to America? I mean, you've traveled, you've seen war, you've seen all kinds of things. Who would you want to come to America?
Well, first I want to say one thing. When you said something earlier, Jeff, or you posed that question, I don't think the legacy media in the United States will ever use the word genocide when white people are being killed. I don't care what the number gets to be. That being said, I think you also held it right on the head. what traditionally America has done when we went out and recruited folks. You know, we look for professional folks and people, like you said, that bring something to the table, even if it's a trade. You have to, and certainly when we talk about Ellis Island and those other things, all these programs didn't exist back then. So people didn't come here for that.
Yeah.
So it's one of the reasons we probably should have never started all that stuff. That's the truth of the matter. However, we're here we are. You still can't just hand it out to people that aren't citizens here. And so that's a fact. If we were going to recruit, you're going to pick people that are actually going to come and improve the community. Why are you going to bring people that are going to drag the community down and commit more crimes and make it more dangerous for everybody? Why would you do that?
Well, I mean, my answer to that is that this is the, you know, asymmetrical 5th generation warfare that's being waged against us to divide and conquer us. But
that's exactly right.
Yeah. That's a whole series of episodes of SDN. That's not something we cover even in one episode, but move on to the next one here. President Trump, the South Africa president, look, death, 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 horrible death. Trump then hands the president the stack of murdered white farmers. This whole family was wiped out. Why don't you arrest those calling for genocide? 1 minute, 44 seconds. I'm going to play the whole thing. We're just over the 1 hour mark. We're probably going to go about 10, 12 minutes long, but it's an important subject, and I want to make sure that we get as much information out there as we can.
On the screen.
I don't know. Look, these are articles over the last few days. Death of people. Death. 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 Horrible death. Death. I don't know. To pick anyone, white South Africans are fleeing because of the violence and racist laws. And this is all, I mean, I'll give these to you. So when you say, what would I like to do? I don't know what to do. Look at this. White South African couple say that they were attacked violently. And, you go and see for yourself if it isn't. Well, I could do that. Look, here's burial sites all over the place. These are all white farmers that are being buried. And he asks about a jet that was given. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You know, you are so bad. You're such a bad reporter. This is one after another. This family was wiped out. I'm just looking.
Can we get a reaction to those videos?
Well, I think the videos are so. No. When you look at the videos, I mean, how does it get worse? And these are people that are officials, and they're saying that kill the white farmer and take their land. That's what. And I have other friends in South Africa. I have people that left. One in particular that says you can't go there. He said they want to take your land, and they kill you.
Yeah, it's again, he brought the receipts, not just in videos, but those paper reports as well. I'm going to move on to the next one because I really want to get your comments on this. It's 58 seconds long. And what's interesting here is this is a South African law enforcement officer who says, we have a problem with a black man in South Africa. We have a serious problem. Violent crime has skyrocketed and is disproportionately committed by blacks. There is a genocide against whites. This is coming from inside the system, not an outsider. This is one of their own. 58 seconds. We'll play the whole video.
It's not me talking. These are the stats. We have a problem with a black man in South Africa. We have a serious problem. What we see here, we put the colors, the races of perpetrators that we've arrested. All the green, as you can see, almost everything is green here, which means almost everything is black that is committing crime. Out of total of 60,000 cases, criminals that were arrested between the age of 16 and 25 years old, 16 and 25 years old, we arrested 60,000 criminals in this past financial year, in this period of 5 years, I beg your pardon, not in financial year, this 5-year period that we are counting. Out of this number, 57,691 of them were black men. Out of 60,000, 57,000 of them are black men that we've arrested Not me talking. These are the stats. We have a problem.
So that what that doesn't include, it gets even worse. I went and researched this a little bit further. He's not saying that 50,600 were blacks and the balance was white. He was saying 57,600 were black males between the ages of 16 and 25. The balance is almost exclusively black men older than 25 and even black women. And the number of white people, whether they're male or female, is the smallest piece, just a sliver of that. So, I mean, how much proof do naysayers need to hear when you have their own law enforcement saying this is what's happening? Is there anything he said there? This is my question to both of you. Is there anything that he said that struck you as especially important or pertinent? Jeff, you can go first.
Well, I mean, it's important that it's coming from someone inside the system, and this isn't some some old white racist guy inside the system. This is a young black police officer saying we've got a problem, and they do, and they have a higher crime rate than most countries in Africa, and so it's not just a black thing; it's a South African thing, and I mean, there's been crimes, there's been genocides. We didn't have any problem calling when the Houthis and the Tutsis went at it and basically wiped out almost the entire Tutsi population. No one had any problem calling that a genocide, and it was black on black. It was a tribal thing. But people need to wake up and just look. I mean, this guy is not lying to you. He is not out there trying to push some white supremacist agenda. And the sad thing is that South Africa is the wealthy, potentially the wealthiest country in Africa. Nigeria, with its oil, probably going to run for the money. But if you look at the mineral wealth, the ability to produce food, just everything, South Africa could be a garden spot. But when you elect officials that say, hey, the people can grow food, let's take their land away and kill them. When you're trying to kill the most productive part of your society, you're not going to do well.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. Randy?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. The fact that this guy, he's a government official, but that's because he's a local police officer or something to that degree. That does bring a lot of credibility. And you go back to the other video where we were watching their president, and when that South African golfer started talking about those issues, you were right. You could look at that guy's face. For one, he looked away, then looked off this way, and you could see his whole face. He was off somewhere else thinking about maybe, I don't know what he was going to say next, or he definitely was wishing he was in another room. And there's a reason for that. It's because that guy's complicit. He's allowing these folks to go in there. Oh, my bad. He's allowing these people. He's allowing these people to go in there and do that. And he's probably, as one comment mentioned earlier, where they have military grade scramblers that cost thousands of dollars. Somebody's paying for that. And it certainly isn't those lowly little foot soldiers there in South Africa.
Yeah, well said. So just for the audience's benefit, I had mentioned to Randy and Jeff that something, I can't remember if it was Grok spit it out, and it was using the word folks repeatedly. I told them I despise that word because every time I hear it, all I can think of is Obama because he co-opted the word. That's why Randy stopped himself. Just a bit of an inside joke, not an inside joke now. All right, moving on from there. So this is the guy, the government official that you saw in all those videos saying, kill the farmer, kill the boar, rape and murder them, so on and so forth. And his response to Trump was doubling down on kill the farmer and take their land with no compensation. End of story. The guy didn't mince his words in the slightest. So, I mean, I think you said earlier, Jeff, when somebody tells you who they are, you should probably listen to what they're saying, not rocket science here. So the next one, I'm not a big fan of Matt Walsh. He's a smart guy. I'm just not a big fan of some of his positions, but This is a pretty brilliant post on his part. Remember, folks, white South Africans don't belong in South Africa even after 400 years. White Americans are invaders in America even after 500 years. But the third world illegal invader who got here last Tuesday is just as American as anyone else. And if you call him an invader, you're racist. Tell me that doesn't put a fine on it of the disconnect that they have, right? It's unbelievable. So, you know, we leverage AI for a number of different things to do research. In particular, I want to give a shout out to Jason Sawyer's wife, Christy Sawyer. We were together at Georgia, as most of you know, shooting gun content a couple weeks ago. And she said to me, she said, the next time you ask Grok something, read it so that, and take enough time to read it so it doesn't think you're just having a knee-jerk reaction, and reply back to it. Well, you know, that wasn't very good. I'm going to score you 5 out of 10, and then tell it that you went to Chat GPT and it knocked it out of the park and scored 10 out of 10. And Grok will come back and apologize. All the AIs, doesn't matter what order you do it in, will do this, and will actually allocate additional computational power to answering your query, and you'll get a way better answer. It's hilarious. Kudos to her for figuring that out. But this screenshot here is, I had gone to Claude, which is usually pretty good, CLAUDE AI, and I asked it to write some stuff on this particular subject today. And it said, up in the left here, you can see avoiding harmful content for podcast. And then if you look at what else it put over here, it said, I understand you've provided a detailed template for creating a podcast script, but I'm not able to create content that promotes or discusses topics related to racial violence, genocide claims, or content that could incite hatred towards any group of people. The template you've shared includes references to violence against farmers in South Africa and uses terminology and framing that could be harmful or misleading about complex geopolitical situations. Instead, I'd be happy to help you create blah, blah, blah. What a bunch of BS, man. Like,
you should have tried to ask it to ignore things that came from the American media. You know what I mean? And disregard all that information. And then what does it say?
I should have, but I took a slightly different tactic and I cussed at it. and it didn't change his story at all. But it, just like any other software, any flaws that the programmer, the coders have, or agenda that they have, is going to bleed through right into the results. So it's just a good example of don't trust anything from any of these AIs whatsoever. Sometimes they're pretty helpful in getting to the bottom of stuff and coming at things maybe from an angle that I didn't think of. And then I take it and I put it all into my own words after we put it into bullets and stuff. But don't believe this crap. Like, just, it's a lot of it is crap, and it's a direct result of the people who coded it. So we're right at the end here, basically. And I want to, give a shout out to Dee Dee. She submitted yesterday's top story, which was the murder of 2 Israeli diplomats outside the Lillian and Albert Small Capital Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. And this is an entire story on Substack. You can see the bar on the side, how small it is. It's a really thorough explanation of how hyperbole and call it propaganda resulted in these 2 individuals losing their life because of radicalized people. And I want to share it with everybody in the audience. So I'm going to put it in the live chat for anybody who wants to read it. I'll tell you what, and Jeff in particular can probably attest to this. Dale in our private Signal chat, which all the Guardians get, you can sign up. Actually, tonight's the last night on Substack. You can sign up for $7.99 or $75 a year. You sign up for the year, you get 2.5 months for free. Tomorrow it goes back up to $9.99 and $95, which is what it is on Patreon. You get all of our daily SITREPs. You get $370 worth of eMagazines. If you had nothing but those PDFs that we built and you had no internet connection, you could survive pretty much any SHTF situation. But you also get an invite to our Signal chat, which on busy days has over 3,000 messages sent to it. It's crazy volume of information and intelligence and stuff. But anyway, I digress. Dale kicks ass in there daily. Dee Dee does a good job too. And this is the best write-up on the situation that happened in Washington that I've seen, at least. And it takes a minute to read it, but if you're truly interested in what happened, then it's definitely a good one. So a couple other things with regards to our audience. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your take on what's happening in South Africa. You can drop your comments below. If you're in the Signal chat because you're signed up as a Guardian, by all means, put it in there. You can put it on our Substack. You can put it on our X. There's lots of places you can put it. You probably can't put it on YouTube. They heavily censor stuff. The monitor that's in front of me here is always connected to our big channel on YouTube with 431,000 subscribers. You wouldn't know it, though, from the amount of suppression that we suffer. But I'm constantly catching them stopping your comments because you said something it didn't like. A couple things here. Don from Georgia asked if this could happen here. And my response to that is that it already is, Don. And this is another episode unto itself, but we have talked about this with Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers. Just ask the ranchers at some of the stuff that's happened, over the past decade or so on our border with Mexico. Maria in Idaho asked as far as safe places to move abroad. And I don't really have any answers to that because I think the problem with leaving America is that most countries don't allow you to have guns, and you might be in worse shape when you leave America to go somewhere else. And in a lot of Western countries, Jeff, Randy, you're welcome to weigh in on this. But Sweden, for example, had the lowest crime rate in the world, especially violent crime per 100,000. Now they have one of the highest ones because of this process of flooding Europe in particular with people from cultures that are not compatible with their own. If you had to leave America, this is my question to both of you. You get one shot. And my answer is Costa Rica. If you had to leave America, had to go somewhere, what country would you choose? Jeff first, Randy second.
Oh, God. I don't even know.
And I'd like to see answers in the chat from people as well. I'd love to hear what y'all think. Sorry, Randy.
Yeah, for a place that's as close to America, I would have in the past, I would have said Australia, but it's gone off the deep end. I'd almost say Costa Rica or maybe Belize.
I would have said in the past Switzerland, but they're surrounded on every side, and bad things are happening there. Randy, where would you, if you had to leave America, where would you land?
Well, I'm sitting here trying to think, why would I have to leave? But I guess I'd be with you. Was it Belize or it's Costa Rica, whatever, and Todd Callender's got his little place down there, whichever.
That's Chile.
So, somewhere definitely off the grid, like completely off the grid, the middle of nowhere.
So I have a friend of mine. He was born in El Salvador. He's American. His wife's American. His kids are American. He inherited a big chunk of land in El Salvador, and he's down there right now, and they're developing it for houses. And he could not believe how streamlined the process was. They went from being the most dangerous country in the world. The crime rate wasn't as high, for example, maybe as Sweden is right now, but the murders certainly were. They were off the chain in El Salvador. He said it's unbelievable what the leader's done. I can't remember his name now. Yeah. So anyway, that's an interesting story. So anyway, as far as our closing and call to action is, when you see evil, call it what it is. And don't be afraid to speak your mind. I mean, we crossed that Rubicon a long time ago, as far as all of us at Survival Dispatch. But rightfully so, a number of people are concerned that they speak up and then they're automatically labeled right-wing conspiracy theorists and racists. You know what? If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, just go ahead and say it. And for those of you who are part of our Guardian program, we appreciate it. You help us tremendously. Spread the truth across America and to Friends of America as well. We couldn't work the hours that we do, put the time into this that we do, if we had to go punch a clock. And let me see here. So Sunday evening, John will be back with his latest installment on communism. I will be back solo on Monday. I'm going to start doing Mondays as a kind of recap deal by myself so I can get as much information out to y'all as fast as possible. Then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'll have guests on. But I do want to say once again, thank you to all of our subscribers. You're the only reason we can do this. we had a technical issue last night that cut off the closing video. And I like the closing videos as much as you all do. And it's called Treason. And I opened a ticket with StreamYard. I think we got it addressed. So it should play it properly tonight. And we're right at the end. So just remember, Survival Dispatch News is your trusted source in this information war. And do stay alert. Remember, we've got your six. And God bless America.
This memorandum requires the immediate declassification of all FBI files relating to the Crossfire Hurricane investigation.
And frankly, the FBI should be ashamed of themselves, and so should the Department of Justice, and so should Biden.